Greetings everyone, welcome to Advanced. This is from the finals of Grand Chess Tour, and with the white pieces we have Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Yesterday Fabiano had a great chance with the white pieces to be able to beat Maxime, and he got a lot of chances, but it was a queen's pawn endgame and it was a very huge grind. But now in this, Maxime has a chance to bounce back. Let's see how Fabi handles this. So without further ado, let's start with this game. Here Maxime starts with e4, we have c5. Now going for the Sicilian, definitely Caruana. Fabi is ready for a fight. We have knight to f3, e6. Now comes d4, we have c captures, knight captures, and knight to f6. We go into the normal line of the Sicilian, knight to f3, knight to c3, knight to c6, and just knight captures. We have b captures, e5. Now immediately knight to d5 and just knight to e4. If you trade here, you don't gain anything, because simply after trading you just take with the pawn and your position will be absolutely fine, and there is no reason to worry about it, and this is not as much of a problem as you thought it would be. So here just c5 now, and in this position you could go for a move like g3 and your position would be absolutely fine. After bishop to b7 you play bishop to g2, just countering that bishop's influence over to this diagonal, and here after this bishop to e7 you play castles and c4, pushing the knight back, knight to b4, and after a move like a3 maybe pushing it back. Yes, white is the one who's in the driver's seat, but most likely this game should still, with perfect play, should still end in a draw. But after c5 we have bishop to e2 now, and now just going for bishop to b7, castles, bishop, queen to c7, and here just going for this knight to d6 check. And the thing is that here in this position you cannot touch the pawn after capturing the knight. Here bishop captures was played because you have to do that, because here you cannot just move the king, otherwise your entire position just collapses. So in this position the thing is, if you captured the pawn here, just c4, and I mean we all know what happens after that. You could just basically resign. But Maxime is obviously not gonna fall, not gonna get such advantage against a player of Fabi's caliber. Here just queen to c6, and now there are a lot of discoveries being threatened in this position. Either you lock this diagonal up with a move like f3, or either you just play the bishop here and your position will be absolutely fine. If you go for bishop to f3, then after c4, because you don't want to allow c4 in this position, because obviously that. So here after a4 you play a5, rook to e1, and after castles your position is absolutely fine and the game goes on. But here after queen to c6 we have f3, that was played in the game by Maxime, and here just c4, because you never want to allow this to exist. Somewhere along the line that's going to become a problematic thing. So here just queen to d4, now centralizing the queen. When you can do that, you should always. Here queen to b6, now comes queen captures, knight captures, and here just bishop to e3 attacking the knight, and just castles. And here in this position bishop caps on b6 was played. You could also go for a move like a4 in this position, nothing wrong with that. But after rook f to c8, a5, and the knight moves, and after this bishop to d4, that bishop looks absolutely really strong there in the center of the board. But you have to be worried about the ideas like that in the future. And the thing is that there is nothing wrong with this line. Everything is maybe drawish. That's why here Maxime did not choose to go for this. But here after the castles, bishop caps on b6, he goes for the trade, and here just a captures. We have bishop caps on c4, finally grabbing that pawn, but rook f to c8 comes with the tempo on the bishop, so you just happen to develop with the tempo on the bishop. Bishop goes to d3, now you're protecting the pawn, and bishop to a6, just challenging that bishop. And the move that you want to play in this position is a rook f to c1, and that's how you retain the advantage, and your position will be absolutely fine. And you cannot go for a move like bishop caps on d3, and after c captures, rook captures. You cannot go for the pawn here, because if you go for the pawn you're just getting checkmated. There are bank rank issues that could exist in the position. So the move that you want to play in this position is g6, and after a3 now you play rook to d8, and after rook to c1 you can understand here, there could be a lot of ideas. If you misplay this even by a margin, then you have to understand the position would be really, really bad, and trading only helps white in this position, because that pass pawn is pushed to the absolute brink. And if you try to stop the capture of that, I'm just going to capture this, I'll have to connect pass pawns, so position will be completely winning. But obviously Fabi's not going to go for something like this, but it's just a line I'm willing to show you that this position can turn out to be really, really bad. But here after bishop to a6 we have rook a to c1. Now can you capture, and can you go for this? Can you go for this pawn somewhere along the line? Well, the thing is that you can, but after bishop caps on d3, c captures, king to f8 was played, and in this position you just lose a little bit of an advantage, because that pawn is somewhere along the line is going to be hanging. But you want to be able to maybe just get the king in first, so that you don't get backrank checkmated, or maybe you want to create some breathing room for the king as well. But here rook to c7 was played, and rook to c7 is a beautiful move in this position by Maxime. Here you cannot even trade this, because here there's a pass pawn, and this position would just be completely winning for Maxime. So here king to e8 was played, rook f to c1, and here rook c to b8, and in this position just a3 was played. We have b5 now, trying to create some counterplay by pushing move like b4 in this position. And the thing is that if you count the number of pawns in this position here, there is 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns, and for Maxime there is only 6 pawns. So the thing is that Fabi is a pawn down and Maxime is a pawn up, but it's a double pawn, not something that can be really annoying. But the thing is that it's stopping the pushing of this pass pawn, and that can be really annoying. So if Maxime had a little bit pieces, if he had like little bit pieces more on the board, maybe the queens on the board, he might be able to push this for a win. But right now, unfortunately, with perfect play, it should be a draw, and both players have over 40 minutes on the clock. I don't think you can go for anything other than draw in this position. And if you go for a move like king to f2 in this position, trying to get the king into the game for the end game, here just king to d8. And after king to e3, the move that you want to play in this position is actually b4. And after a captures, you play rook captures, and after rook 1 to c2, you can go for this attack the pieces, maybe just not allow the pushing of the pawn, also just spinning this pawn, and your position would be fine. What you don't want to do after king to e3 is play rook to c8, because if you play rook to c8, your position could entirely collapse, because here rook captures, and rook captures. Seems like you're drawing, but the pawn in game is very easily winning for white. So that's something that you don't want to do in this position, and it's always better to know what you don't want to do rather than something what you want to do, because you can always figure out what you want to do after you know what you don't want to do. So here after b5, here rook to c3 was played. I mean, seems like a passive move. Why did you just bring the rook back? It was obviously really good there, but well, the position really called for it. So here just king to d8, rook to b3, now b4, but here just rook captures, a captures, and now you have two sets of double pawns. I mean, that's just really bad. But the thing is that you can just go for a draw in this position. Here rook to a6 was played. Now just comes king to f2, rook caps on d6, finally grabbing the annoyance that of that pawn is. Here just king to e3, rook to b6, and here just king to d2. Now rook caps on b4. That's what happens with the double pawns. I mean, they just get captured here, and that's the problem with it. So here just king to c3 was played, but after rook to b6, just rook to a1 was played. Now just comes rook to c6 check, king to d2, rook to b6, king to c3, and here in this position, both players agreed to go for a draw. So both of the classical games were actually drawn. Now who's going to win the Grand Chess Tour finals is going to be decided by 2 rapid games and 4 blitz games. And the thing is that it's going to be really hectic for Fabi, just simply because of the fact that, you know, after this he has to go and play India versus USA. That's going to happen in Texas. Now he's in Brazil, and from Brazil to go to Texas, it's roughly an 11 or 12 hour flight, and it's going to be really hectic because you're just playing on 4th of October, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Be it 4th or be it 5th, doesn't matter, because, you know, then right after this he has to go and play that. So it's going to be really hectic. But, you know, the schedule is a schedule. I mean, he's a top level player. He has been to some really hectic schedules, and he's made out, you know, pretty decent. So let's see what happens with Fabi's match against Arjun. It's going to be absolutely spectacular to watch. I'll be covering that as well, so, you know, stay tuned for that, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon. Thank you very much for watching.